And what I mean by customer experience is we're seeing a downward trend in CX that has continued to go down despite all of these additional investments. Second, we're seeing an increase in disparity of who's actually getting to interact with humans. And I think I love how Allison Pugh, a sociologist, put it, is being able to have a human attend to your needs has become a luxury good.
Welcome to the SaaS Builder Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Wootton, and today we're going to discuss executive relationships fueling growth. Joining me is a good friend, Jay Thayer, who's the founder of Jay Thayer Consulting. Jay is an expert in executive engagement and strategic communications with over 25 years of experience building authentic, high-impact relationships that drive growth, and has worked with people such as Mark Benioff, President George W. Bush, Adam Grant, and Jane Goodall. And we're going to start today's conversation by diving into how strategic executive relationships fuel growth. Thanks, Jay, for joining us on SaaS Builder Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Randy.
It's my absolute pleasure. I saw you work your magic at Salesforce. I had no idea that you had worked with the president as well. That's incredible.
It was indeed a wild experience for myself as well, and sometimes have to pinch myself in some of these kind of wild moments.
Yeah, wow. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but obviously our audience are early stage founders and they're trying to figure out how to even think about executive relationships and where do they focus their energy and effort. And so let's start with today's deep dive conversation around, can you share your perspective on why executive relationships are such a critical dimension of business success? And what are the mistakes that execs often make when trying to build these relationships, especially in that early stage modality?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's interesting for me in tracking this space, and I'm seeing, I don't want to call it a perfect storm, but a storm of different trends that are happening that are leading in a direction that I think is also a tremendous opportunity. I think first and foremost, we're seeing in the industry, across the industry, a decrease in not only customer experience, but also trust. And what I mean by customer experience is we're seeing a downward trend in CX that has continued to go down despite all of these additional investments. Second, we're seeing an increase in disparity of who's actually getting to interact with humans. And I think I love how Allison Pugh, a sociologist, put it, is being able to have a human attend to your needs has become a luxury good. Third is an accountability crisis where no one within the organization is directly responsible for the issues that are being created. And this is getting worse with algorithms and AI and whatnot in place today. And then finally, short-term thinking, just there's a lot of pressures, understand, on you've got your investors, you've got your directors, and you need to show that short-term gain. And there's a lot that's happening through attempts to automate and efficiency, which is actually eroding that customer experience and, dare I say, the company culture and those opportunities for long-term growth. So those are all the things that I'm seeing.
And so to bring that together is kind of what's super interesting. I think we get a lot of pressure as operators to scale. Right. So how do you scale your outreach? How do you scale your engagement? How do you scale all your operations? And I know even at Maxio, we've worked to scale our operations globally. And so everything scale. And I think one of the things you talk about is that in this specific instance, scale, if you think about scale, it really does negate or decrease the ability to have meaningful engagements. Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, and it's this, where are you gauging with where you want to get with efficiency and automation and scale, and then where you want to drive these relationships. And that pendulum will swing. And I think what happens is, I always like to think that you don't outsource your relationships with your family to AI or to systems. Those are meaningful things. And you need to make some of these investments and think about where you want scale and where you need to actually go very high touch. And so scale, it can be a big obstacle to meaningful actual executive engagement. So scaling up can actually mean scaling down genuine connection.
Can't do a podcast without talking about AI. Can you help us understand specifically how AI and technology have changed the way organizations build meaningful relationships and engagements today?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot that we're investing in the areas of AI. And some of that, though, is maybe fundamental in this belief that we can industrialize or repeat everything that happens in human interaction and think about that and what that's potentially doing to squeezing out authentic human connection. So it's not to say that AI is not the right thing, but it is striking the right balance of what it does and what you continue to do as a human in that relationship.
Yeah, so it's very contrarian. I mean, most guests I have on board are talking about AI is unlocking the future, and everybody needs to engage on it to drive augmented intelligence and better scale. And I know I have that admonition across my teams in terms of how you're driving more efficiency by using AI. And in this one case in particular, AI is not helping.
Yeah, and you know what I'm betting on is I'm betting on good old fashioned human connection and humanity's need for that. It's been written into our DNA for thousands of years, and it's not something that just goes away overnight. And I think we have gotten the balance wrong between efficiency and meaningful relationships, which is starving out that human connection. And I'm sure you see this a lot in your own interactions. It's why executives love to get together, to be with their peers. You and I have been a part of a broader mission in some of the philanthropic work that we've done. And it's about common cause, purpose, scale. Humans just gravitate to that. And even this will never replace being able to, for example, go out on a bike ride with you. This is great, but it is not by anything superior to those kinds of experiences. And so that's where I think there's a tremendous opportunity.
I think you're right. I think there's this interesting dynamic. I know a lot of CEOs, me included, it's a lonely job. So one thing you're looking for is just connections, and there are
Yeah.
CEO groups out there. I think of YPO, EO, Vistage. So for early stage founders, if you don't have a peer network, really important to do that. But I also think one of the things you did at Salesforce in particular is I remember it, you fostered conversations with people where they felt safe and they felt like they were having honest conversations where they weren't being sold anything. And I think there's a real hunger for it by CEOs. So maybe talk a little bit about that. What were some of the most surprising things you found when you created these environments for people to have authentic conversations? And it was in a business context, right? So it's not on the bike, but we did do bike rides too, and that was
That's
cool. But
true.
like, what was it about the forums that created a catalyst for connections beyond
Yeah.
just transaction?
It's really a no sell zone, right? And it's elevating that conversation at the executive level. And I like to think about this as how you're actually investing in mutual success, how you're investing in their success as leaders, how you're connecting them. You talk about this term, connecting them to their tribe. So they're starting to meet some of their peers and hear their stories and benchmark from them, and then really using that as a truly listening and responding. It's very easy to go into keynote mode, but this is a listen, respond, understand, help them to feel heard as part of that. And that was the magic, and it was very difficult to achieve that. You talked about some of the obstacles. I think an example of this is twofold. If you think about the number of times we got really great people in the room and we made the mistake of just talking at them and we learned nothing.